owes less to an eye for detail, which is common enough in the financial sector, than it does to a grasp of the broad picture in which wide patterns emerge and altogether new business opportunities become visible. Yet in taking on the task of reporting my conversations with Zafar, of collating and presenting all the material he provided, including volumes of rich and extensive notebooks, and of following up with my own research where necessary, it is the matter of representing details that has most occupied me, the details, to be precise, of his story, which is, to risk putting it in such dramatic terms as Zafar would deprecate, the story of the breaking of nations, war in the 21st century, marriage into the English aristocracy, and the mathematics of love. I had not heard the name of the 20th century Austrian-American mathematician Kurt Gödel since a July weekend in New York in the early 1990s, when I was visiting from London for a month of induction at the head offices of an investment bank into which I had recently been recruited. In some part, I owe my recruitment to the firm, of which I later became a partner, to Zafar, who was already a derivatives trader in the bank's Wall Street offices and who had quickly established a reputation as a bright, though erratic, financial wizard. Like Zafar, I was a student of mathematics at Oxford, but that, to put it imprecisely, was the beginning and the end of what we had in common. Mine was a privileged background. My father was born into a well-known landed family in Pakistan, where he met and married my mother. From there, the newlyweds went to Princeton, where they had me, making me an American citizen, and where my father obtained his doctorate before moving to Oxford so that he could take up a chair in physics. I am no genius, and I know that without the best English schooling, I would not have been able to make as much as I have of the opportunities that came my way. Zafar, however, arrived at Oxford in 1987 with a peculiar education, largely cobbled together by his own efforts, having been bored, when not bullied, out of one school after another. His family moved to Britain when he was no more than 5 years old, but then at the age of 12, or 10, by the new reckoning, he returned from Britain to rural Bangladesh for an interval of some years. To him, Oxford must have seemed, as the expression goes, a long way to come. In our first term there, as we lounged in the junior common room beside windows that gave out onto the garden quad, I observed that Zafar's pronunciation of the names of various continental mathematicians, Lebesgue, Gauss, Cauchy, Legendre, and Euler, was grotesquely inaccurate. Though my first reaction, I am a little ashamed to say, was to find this rather amusing, I soon grasped that Zafar's errors marked his learning as his own, unlike mine, which carried the imprint of excellent schoolmasters. I must confess to a certain envy at the time. The greatest difference between us, however, the significance of which I did not begin to ascertain until 2 years after our first meeting, lay in our social classes. As I mentioned, my father was an academic at Oxford, and my mother, after seeing off her only child to university, had returned to practicing as a psychotherapist, throwing herself into the retraining necessary to make up ground lost while raising me. My maternal grandfather had been Pakistan's ambassador to the United States and had moved in that country's elite internationalist circles. His closest friend had been Mohammed Assad, Pakistani ambassador to the UN shortly after 1947, a man who had begun life as Leopold Weiss, an Austro-Hungarian Jew born in what is now Ukraine. On the paternal side, my grandfather was an industrialist whose fortune, based on landholdings and tenancies, he augmented with the profits of shipping enterprises. More than once during term time, Zafar came with me to lunch at my parents' home, a large double-fronted 3-story Victorian house like many in that part of Oxford, though somewhat more capacious than the homes of most academics. To this day, whenever I return there, I feel an ease and lightness suffuse my being as I tread across the sweeping arc of the driveway, the gravel crunching underfoot, up to the stained glass of the wide front door. On his first visit, Zafar stood at the threshold, wiping his feet over and over, his eyes darting about the large hall, his mouth slightly open. Evidently